Hello and welcome to the February 2023 edition of Photo Recap. My name is Josh and today we're going to talk about my 5 favorite photos that I posted last month. So without further ado, let's get to it. Up first, we have a double exposure of my girlfriend Harley. This photo was taken on Kodak Ultramax 400 with a Ricoh XR2 and a 50mm lens. The way that I took this photo was actually rather simple. What I did was I blacked out the entire room and I made sure that Harley was wearing a black shirt. Then I put her on the right side of frame and illuminated her with a variable LED that I have, and I just set it to the color blue. I made sure to have her stand far back from the wall because I didn't want any of that light spilling onto the wall itself. I took an exposure meter reading from her cheek to make sure that I had the right exposure, and I took the photo. Then what I did was I used a feature on the Ricoh XR2, which is a multiple exposure button. So when you hold down the button and you advance the lever, what happens is you're advancing the shutter, but you're not advancing the film through the back of the camera. And then I just flipped everything around. I put Harley on the left side of frame. I made sure to mark where her feet were standing, and I illuminated her with a red LED. I told her to turn her head and smile, and I took the photo. And this is what we got. As I was doing this photo shoot, I guess I was doing something a little bit subconsciously. You'll notice that on the right side of frame, Harley kind of has a despondent look about her. Whereas on the left side of frame, when she's illuminated in red, she's got this smile on her face, happy-go-lucky attitude. I actually enlisted Harley's help in taking a similar photo of me. I'll show you that. And here you can see that I'm doing the exact same thing, where on the left side of frame, I look happy, and on the right side of frame, when I'm illuminated in blue, I look, well, blue, emotionally speaking. So I guess what I was trying to do here was illustrate a little bit of a duality of human emotion, bouncing between happy and sad. I'd love to say that it was intentional, but it really didn't hit me until I got the scans back from the lab that I noticed that we were both looking sad in the blue light and looking happy in the red light. I think it's subtle in the way that you look at it and you say, oh, that's a pretty cool looking photo, but then you think about it and there's a deeper layer of meaning to it. One other thing that I'll also note that I love about this photo is the sort of implied S-curve that's in the center, in between the red Harley and the blue Harley. That's something that I'm probably going to mention a couple more times in this video, but it's something that I noticed myself trying to do more in my photography is implied lines, whether they be leading lines, curved lines, S-curved lines, because it's one thing to actually have a literal line leading your eye someplace, but it's another to kind of imply that it's there using negative space, empty space, what have you. And here's an example of that. Up next, we have a photo of a light fixture that I took in Fort Worth, Texas. This photo was also taken on Kodak Ultramax 400 with a Pentax K1000 and a 50mm lens. Harley and I took a trip to Fort Worth, Texas, and it's not important why, but we were there for an entire day. We ended up going to this Vietnamese distillery, and inside the distillery they had this hanging light fixture, chandelier looking thing, and I thought it looked cool, so I pointed my camera up and fired away. I think what I like most about this photo is the fall off into darkness when you go from bottom to top. It really kind of gives this feeling of maybe falling to a pit of darkness or maybe falling out of a pit of darkness, since the light is on the bottom of the frame. It's almost like you're falling to the light, or rather that you're falling with the light out of darkness. I think I like it because I don't like to always get bogged down with metaphors in my photography, but I like that this photo can sort of be read more metaphorically from top to bottom or bottom to top, whether you are ascending to darkness or you are descending to the light. This photo utilizes the filling the frame technique, as well as a slight diagonal from the top left to the bottom right. And the use of negative space, all the darkness above the actual light itself, sort of implies that there's like this void of some sort. It's devoid of something. And actually this photo makes me feel quite uneasy, and I think that's part of the appeal for it, for me at least, is that something feels wrong about it. I think it is that aspect of the light being on the bottom and the dark being on top. For some reason it tickles the brain in a way that I can't really put into words, but I like it all the same. Up next we have a photo of a dead end sign. This photo was taken on Kodak Ultramax 400 with a Ricoh XR2 and a 50mm lens. I took this photo on New Year's Day. I spent New Year's in an Airbnb in Southampton, Long Island, and the next morning the weather was beautiful, sunny, bright, a perfect day to go take some photos. So we went out to the water, and I saw this dead end sign right in front of the ocean, and I knew I just had to take a photo of it. There's a couple of things working in tandem with this photo that makes me like it so much. One is the color. I love the contrast of the light blue sky, the dark blue choppy waters, and the yellow sign and the red rectangle below the sign. All of it just works to give me a color palette that I just love. Blue and yellow is really one of those mixtures that just really does it for me. And on a deeper level, you have this sign that says dead end, and right behind it you have nothing but ocean. There's a little bit of land peeking out on the horizon, but mostly you just see open water. Now, I don't know about any of you out there, but I do have a mild phobia of open water. Being stuck in open water, lost at sea, that does kind of terrify me. So the fact that we have this sign indicating that it's a dead end, and we have open water, and we have a nice, beautiful, sunny day out, it's almost like the ocean is harboring a deadly, powerful secret. And the sign is almost begging you not to succumb to it. And once again, we have leading lines on either side of the sign, that's the horizon, that lead you right to the sign. I think the most powerful part of this image is that the background is reinforcing and amplifying the foreground interest, the sign telling you that this is a dead end. Up next, we have a photo of some brown shoes. This photo was taken on Kodak Ultramax 400 with a Ricoh XR2 and a 50mm lens. Like I'm sure many of you out there, when I get bored and I have nothing else to do, but it's a nice enough day outside, I will go outside for a walk. And on one of my walks, I found this large brown metal rectangular prism container of some sort. And on top of it were these brown shoes and this empty coffee cup. So naturally, I stopped to take a photo. The Ricoh XR2 has an aperture priority mode, so I was set to that. I set my aperture as high as it could go, shot it at, I think, 1/1000th of a second, and that way I was able to have a shallow depth of field. So the brown shoes are in focus, and the coffee cup and everything beyond the shoes are out of focus. So we have the shallow depth of field, but not only that, we have this sort of, again, implied line leading you from the shoes to the coffee cup, and it's a diagonal line. I really like this photo because of the calmness of it, as well as the mixture of colors. You have this sort of brown against the brown box and the brown sidewalk, and you have the white coffee cup against the bluish green road that's beyond it. It's actually just painted that way. I'm not sure why, but it looks cool. And like I mentioned, we have this implied leading line, and we have these literal leading lines as well. We have the implied line from the shoes to the coffee cup, but then we also have the literal ones that are the sidewalk on the top left corner that sort of diagonally go down, and it slices right through the coffee cup. Also, an underrated element of these photos is the shadows of both the shoes and the coffee cup. I think that they add some nice texture and dimension to the objects in the photo. Up next, we have a photo of a lighthouse. I took this photo on Kodak Ultramax 400 with a Ricoh XR2 and a 28mm lens. So as I mentioned, New Year's Day was a beautiful, beautiful day where I was out on Long Island. So Harley and I decided to drive from Southampton to Montauk. We wanted to see the lighthouse on the very end of Long Island. The gate was closed, so we couldn't actually get close to the lighthouse, but I was able to hop up on a wooden fence, look over the gate, and take this photo. What I really like about this photo is the horizon line that is dividing these sort of two halves of the photo. You have the bright blue sky, but you also have this sort of yellowish, dull looking grass below the lighthouse, and you have the lighthouse in the center. The horizon line has this curving nature to it that just draws your eye in a nice little downward slope as you read from left to right, and I think the sun was in a perfect position. The lighthouse was far away, and so it seems smaller within the frame, but I almost feel like that adds to the air of mystery that lighthouses offer in everyday life. I don't know about you guys, but I always felt like lighthouses exhibited this sort of mysterious effect in and of themselves. So the fact that we couldn't get closer to this one made it all the more inviting, made it all the more seductive in a way. I think there's also something to be said about seeing a lighthouse in the daytime. It's not really something that we associate with lighthouses. For this photo, I use a technique that I use all the time, which I keep telling myself I'm going to try not to do, which is centering up the subject. It's a technique that I just call keeping it simple, and there's nothing really fancy about it. I put the lighthouse in the center of the frame, and I let the duality of the two sides of the horizon line sort of do all the work for me. I mentioned it before, but the contrast of the colors blue and yellow just really does it for me, and you get a little hint of that in this photo. I think at some point I'm going to try to do a video on color theory in photography, because it is something that really, really interests me. And there we have it, my 5 favorite photos that I posted in February. I think it's important for me to be doing these videos because it gives me an opportunity to be critical of the composition, framing, lighting, color, all of these things, all of these different elements of my photos, and really dive deep. And hopefully I use the things that I say in these videos to inform my photography going forward, which I feel like I'm already doing, and it makes me excited about the photos that I already have that I'm excited to show you guys in later months. But until then, I'll leave you all with some photos that didn't make the cut this month, and I'll see you all next time. Okay.